listener production.
Hey, Chris Speary with you. Welcome to The Briefing. The fight against AI-generated child sexual abuse material is taking a new path, with hopes digital poison will be a major disruptor.
If we inject very small patterns into the image by modifying it at the pixel level, that pattern is what the AI will end up learning instead, because the pattern's been optimized to confuse the AI that's trying to learn from it.
So what is digital poison and how will it work? That's coming up in the second half of this episode. First though, let's get into the headlines with Sacha Barbour Gatt on Wednesday, the 26th of November.
Hey Chris, and to you listening, we are starting with some bad news for those of us who love a cheeky Uber Eats or DoorDash order. You could soon be paying more for delivery, and it's all thanks to a world-first deal. Now, if you caught yesterday's deep dive, you would have been bracing for this anyway, now that Menulog's out of the game and the two pretty much control the market. But experts are warning a delivery price hike is now likely after the two companies agreed to pay drivers minimum wage, Chris.
Yes, after 8 years of campaigning by workers, Uber Eats and DoorDash reached an agreement with the Transport Workers Union yesterday, which still requires final approval from the Fair Work Commission. But essentially what it means is that instead of being paid per delivery, drivers will be paid hourly while also having accident insurance covered by the platforms.
These workers will move to the minimum wage plus 25% for each and every hour that they work. That is significant.
That's Michael Caine, the National Secretary of the union, speaking there. Now, the move's been welcomed by both platforms, but experts expect that while they welcome it, they will pass on the new costs to restaurants and, by proxy, customers.
Well, in your deep dive, Chris, when you spoke to Scott Phillips, he said that we should be happy to pay more. And in this case, I would be, if it means that the person who is, driving on the roads, it's very dangerous. We know that. They feel time pressure because they're trying to do as many deliveries as possible to make as much money as possible. I'm happy to pay more so that they get a guaranteed minimum wage, an hourly rate that they can rely on. I mean, everything's expensive and it's hard, but at the same time, it's a luxury. And if you want your food delivered, you should be willing to make sure that the person doing it is safe and paid well.
Yeah, and if the word insurance got thrown around, you're kind of like, wait, why do they need this? 18 delivery workers have died on the job in Australia since the union began tracking fatalities back in 2017. That is significant.
Yeah.
So, to see Uber Eats and DoorDash kind of coming to the table here to be footing the bill and supporting their drivers in this way is a landmark thing, and it is historic in a lot of ways. Now, look, very briefly, Menulog, it's gone, but they have struck a little deal with Uber Eats. And the reason we know that is because Uber Eats put out a statement last night. But also, if you hop on the Menulog app, there are some incentives for joining Uber Eats. If you are a Menulog customer, you can get up to 50% off. I'm not being a spokesperson, but just letting you know there are some rewards that you can reap if you were a Menulog customer. And now that the app is gone, take full advantage of it.
Changing pace now, and the worker who loaded passengers onto a SeaWorld helicopter that crashed almost 3 years ago has broken down at an inquest into the tragedy. Grace Hickey has told the court that she escorted the passengers onto one of the flights and put on their seatbelts before the collision, which killed 4 people on the Gold Coast in January of 2023. Chief Pilot Ash Jenkinson, British tourists Ron and Diane Hughes, and Sydney mother Vanessa Tadros died instantly, while 8 others were rushed to hospital when the two SeaWorld choppers collided.
Questions have been raised about the level of training that was given to staff and also whether there was adequate pilot training and passenger safety briefings, while a damning report from the Australian Transport Safety Bureau has highlighted the helicopters in the SeaWorld fleet, which were relatively new, had major issues including with pilot visibility, safety lighting and radio equipment.
Now, this inquest into the tragedy started on Monday, and on that day, Chris, harrowing footage of the crash was released as part of the hearings. It's really, really awful. Coroner Carol Lee will hear from 30 witnesses over the next 2 weeks to determine the cause of the crash.
In what feels like a major U-turn from Labor, the Finance Minister has confirmed reports that she's asked Cabinet Ministers and public service bosses to find savings in their budgets. Katie Gallagher yesterday having this to say.
What we have asked agencies to do is think about all the things they're doing, all the programs they administer,
and to consider whether they are still priorities.
According to the Financial Review, Gallagher instructed them to find savings in their budgets of up to 5%, which equates to around $5.6 billion a year, something experts warn could be one of the biggest cost-cutting exercise in Canberra in decades, something that we really haven't seen since the Hawke-Keating governments in the late 1980s. Now, while we don't know the specifics, this hypothetically could mean that the Department of Defence would have to shed around $2.6 billion, while the ATO would have to find around $239 million in savings.
Now, it is worth noting the Finance Minister has denied that these savings will be made in the form of cuts, describing it rather as a reprioritisation and an exercise in discipline. You've got to love the politicking around this. A reminder, Labor did campaign very heavily against the Coalition's promise to cut 41,000 public servants from Canberra during the election campaign. And while her instructions to department heads don't include an explicit directive to cut jobs to meet these goals, a 5% reduction in the public service would look like around 10,000 positions, either via natural attrition or redundancies.
Groundbreaking new research into, you guessed it, our brains has revealed they go through 5 major eras of development, hitting a peak at age 32. The study has analysed brain scans of over 4,000 people aged between 1 and 90, finding 4 pivotal turning points when our neural connections move onto a different trajectory. That happens when we're 9, 32, 66 and 83 years old.
I've hit my peak, Chris. She's 32. It's all over from here. The University of Cambridge research has also found that when it comes to our brains, we exit adolescence at 32. So I'm the only adult in the room right now, apparently. Doesn't surprise me, actually.
Yeah, no.
Effectively, that's when your noggin enters its adulthood era. I know. Scientists say the biggest change is between ages 9 to 32, when our heads get more efficient, and that is the time period as well when mental health disorders are at their highest risk of developing. The most stable phase comes between 32 and 66, when you might find yourself at your most intelligent and confident.
Then it's all downhill from there, with early aging phase kicking in at 66 and late aging from 83. Researchers theorise becoming a parent could represent the big shift seen in the early 30s. The study also didn't take into account whether the brains being analysed belong to males or females, with menopause another contributor to a changing brain.
Super interesting. And the parenthood thing, they know that a woman's brain actually significantly changes after she becomes a mother. And as you said, menopause as well. So we know women's brains actually go through more changes. So it'd be really interesting to see this research done, but with that distinction of is it a male brain or is it a female brain?
And in one of America's weirder traditions, the president has formally saved 2 turkeys from slaughter ahead of Thanksgiving celebrations. Donald Trump has welcomed Gobble and Waddle to the White House to give the official pardon. It's a tradition that dates back to Abraham Lincoln in 1863, when historians say the then president spared a turkey's life after his son befriended it.
To live in the US, right? What a weird place.
Fully.
Look, ever the opportunist, Trump couldn't help but make the event a chance to spruik a policy. And this time he chose to hone in on crime. And part of that was really taking to town the Illinois governor over whether he would welcome National Guard troops in to clean up the city. And while sparing Gobble and Waddle, Trump had this to say.
I refuse to talk about the fact that he's a fat slob. I don't mention it. On a more serious note, as we gather around the dinner table, I'd like to lose a few pounds too, by the way. And I'm not going to lose it on Thanksgiving, I can tell you that, because I'm going to have a turkey, but it's not going to be that one.
Look, I do want to quickly make the point, Chris, there are concerns for Waddle. Trump
The
formally...
turkey, just to be clear. The
Yes,
turkey.
sorry. The turkey. Trump formally pardoned Gobble, but Waddle was actually missing in action at the time, right? They don't know where Waddle was. Waddle was in the vicinity, but he wasn't there. Trump only formally pardoned Gobble with his words. So hopefully Waddle doesn't end up on someone's table on Thursday.
Yeah, no, spare a thought for Waddle. Now, look, that is it for our headlines for today. Coming up next is your deep dive, looking at the new AI tool that's fighting child sex abuse material. Have a listen to that up next.
Just before we get going, a quick warning. The following chat discusses child sexual abuse. If that's not for you, feel free to tap out and we'll catch you on our next episode. Have you heard of data poisoning? If not, you're about to learn about it and how it's being used in the fight against child sexual abuse material. The Australian Federal Police has warned of a recent spike in the use of AI to create the images and is now looking to disrupt the production in the backend. Teaming up with researchers at Monash University, the pair are working on a tool called Silvera, which will make it very hard for abusers to use images of kids online to make the material. The AI for Law Enforcement and Community Safety Lab is the joint collaboration, and its project lead is Elizabeth Perry. She's joining me now. Elizabeth, to begin, can you tell us more about data poisoning? What is it and how exactly does it work?
The idea behind data poisoning is that when an AI is learning from images, it's trying to pick up those patterns in the image. And if we inject very small patterns into the image by modifying it at the pixel level, so this could be moving 1 pixel or 1 or 2 pixels by only a couple of values in either direction, making it slightly more green, slightly more blue. Applying that across the image, we can add a very small and subtle pattern into the image, and that pattern is what the AI will end up learning instead, because the pattern's been optimized to confuse the AI that's trying to learn from it.
How would that work then in terms of like an image? Is it looking to disrupt AI's learning? Say I take a photo of my child and I upload it to Facebook. Is the idea that I'd run that image through this program, this tool, and it wouldn't change the image when I look at it, but it would change it for AI so it couldn't learn from it? Is that kind of right?
That's a completely accurate understanding, actually. I couldn't put it better myself.
Oh, excellent. Well, there we go. All right, we'll end it now. No, just kidding. How would that work to disrupt the production of AI-generated child sexual abuse material? Like, can you explain to us how we know abusers are using AI in this space and then how the tool you're working on would change that?
Yeah, so there are a couple of ways that we know that abusers are using AI. And the first of them is that the e-Safety Commissioner in a recent report noted that an incident of deepfake abuse is happening in schools in Australia about once a week. And the second is that internationally speaking, the databases which are tracking the known instances of child sexual abuse material being shared on the dark web is reporting a constant and steady uptick in the amount of content that's there that is generated by AI. So both of those are pretty big warning signs that it's something that offenders are using more and more. From my perspective, the tool's going to be at its best if we can get it into the hands of as many people as possible. And what we'd really like to do is find the best way to do that. So that could mean a full public release, which is what we've been currently planning, so that members of the public can use it to protect their own images, images of their children, any images they upload of themselves and their friends. And we're also hoping to get in touch with any social media companies that are looking at taking the project on board and saying, this is something that we've been working on. This could improve safety and security on your platform. That's really relevant for any platforms where sharing and uploading images is normalized. So the Instagrams, the Facebooks of the world.
So do you think once it's in use, this could make a significant impact in stamping out the production of AI-generated child sexual abuse material? Like, how big could this be in disrupting what is an absolutely heinous crime that's going on in society?
Yeah, it's certainly, we have hope for the impact. How far reaching those impacts are, I think is really hard to say. Certainly one of the challenges is that there's a lot of material that's already out there that is not protected by Silvera. And what that means is that anyone who is trying to generate child sexual abuse material using AI from that already unprotected material can kind of continue to do that. But the hope very much within the lab is that it'll significantly slow down and make it harder for anyone to be generating new material from people who are wanting to be uploading their photos from the release of the tool.
So where are you at then with the project at the moment?
So we're pretty deep into the prototyping stage, and we're kind of hoping to get it to a release at some point in the next 6 months or so.
And are programs like this being used anywhere else right now?
There are other labs working on this and similar topics. I'd point to CSIRO's Data 61 team, who are doing some really excellent research also in the area trying to prevent deepfakes. And there are other researchers out there in the data poisoning sphere who are targeting different sides of the generative AI challenge. But to the best of our knowledge, there aren't any people who are using this in a deployed production environment for members of the public to be using every day.
What other tools could be used in conjunction with something like Silvera that you're aware of that could do more good work in this space?
Yeah, so I think that one of the opportunities in the space at the moment is just in being able to be really confident when an image has been AI generated or a video has been AI generated. And There are tools which work similarly to Silvera, but which leave just a kind of a digital watermark on the final image. It's a little bit like when the Mint are making banknotes, they're adding all of these watermarks and details so they can be confident that if a note shows up, they know the history and the story of where that banknote has been. It works a little bit like that in the sense that we're trying to figure out if we find an image that's been AI generated, we can be pretty confident of its original source and its attribution. We know that it's AI generated. And that can be useful to help platforms to automatically tag and remove harmful content that's been AI generated.
So one of the things with AI is that it continues to learn, and that's why it's so powerful and also quite scary because we don't know how smart it's going to be. Now, if you're creating this tool that's supposed to disrupt AI, couldn't it learn how to just get around it?
It's a bit like any arms race in some senses. You know, the defenders are always trying to be building tougher and tougher armor, and the attackers are always trying to be building better and more powerful weapons. And I think that it's certainly possible that in 12 months' time, the sort of most cutting-edge AI, maybe it's a Stable Diffusion 4 or 5, it's a Flux 2, one of those sorts of really cutting-edge checkpoints might be able to get past it completely. And my hope certainly would be at that time, then we would be able to improve Silvera as well. We'd be able to learn too. I mean, Silvera uses AI of its own to optimize the poison that it's adding to the image. And I would certainly hope that by that day, then we'll have improved as well.
I've recently become a parent, and it is on my mind about whether to post my son on social media. I've made my accounts much more private. I was on public on Instagram before. I have posted a few images, but now I'm kind of sitting in the space of, well, as he gets older, am I going to want to post images? Am I worried about who is going to get their hands on these images and how they might use them? Do you anticipate that a tool like Silvera would be popular with parents, that they will go, well, I want to be proud of and post my child on social media because I share my life on social media and I want, my friends and family to see that. But, I want to essentially protect those images. Do you see as parents being one of your major uptakers of a program or a tool like Silvera?
That's certainly something that we would hope for, absolutely. Realistically, anybody who is wanting to be sharing their images and be conscious of the safety and the way that that's handled would benefit from using a tool like Silvera. And my thinking is that parents in particular are exactly the kind of people who would want to make use of that. Realistically, the safest move is almost always still just not going to be uploading the images. But my hope is that Silvera would make it safer to do so. It changes the risk space in such a way that you can do that with much more confidence and comfort.
Elizabeth Perry, thank you so much for joining us on the briefing today. It's a really fascinating space in the fight against AI-generated child sexual abuse material.
Great. Thank you so much, Sasha. It's a pleasure.
That was Elizabeth Perry, the research lead of Silvera, speaking with me there. And that is it for this episode of The Briefing. Thanks so much for listening. Be sure to check us out on socials. We'd love to have you there. We are on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast, and we're also on TikTok. I'm Sacha Barbour Gatt. Catch you next time.